and today we will continue our series on the book of Matthew. Last week, we came to the place where Jesus said that he came to fulfill the law and the prophet. And we took a little bit deep dive into what it means, what Jesus means when he refers to the law. We went all the way back to Genesis, and in essence, actually there is only one law. And that law is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And the second is like that, which means the second flows out of the first. And without the first, there is no second. Which implies that there is actually one law, which is to love your neighbor. There is no one who can love his neighbor without first loving God. And this was the law. Then we took a turn to Romans chapter 7, where Paul engages with the law and asked, was the law itself evil? Because out of the law came sin. Out of this commandment that God gave Adam and Eve in the garden brought sin. Then we came to understand that there is actually one more law. There is another law, the law of sin and death. It is very difficult to describe this law, but the Bible describes this in several different ways. And the reason why I'm trying to establish this foundation is this will help us to understand what Jesus is going to do following the ethics that he's going to give. This law of sin and death, some place in the Bible describe it as our old self working within us. It might be described as heavenly principalities, evil forces that are working against us so that we don't obey God. And then in Romans chapter 8, Paul makes it clear that this is what Christ came to do, and that is what last week we saw. He came to fulfill, which means he came to bring the law of spirit and life. That with him, when we run to him, when we reconcile with him, then we are actually able to obey God. We are actually able to live a righteous life. So, Jesus, after establishing that, he said at the last verse, if you remember verse 22, that all of those who choose to follow him, our righteousness must exceed that of their scribes and the Pharisees. Do you remember that? What is Jesus referring to when he talks about our righteousness? Now, not long ago, I read a story. I saw a video. There was a very nice Korean, very beautiful Korean-looking girl who lived in America so many years. And he heard the news about a community which had been destroyed by a flood. So he gathered her friends, and they went to the community and they donated a lot of things and even gave $30,000. Now, when she did this, she had a message to tell the world. And that was the main reason why she made the video. And the message that she wanted to tell the world was where she got the money from. And brothers and sisters, can you guess where she got the money from? OnlyFans. And she was very proud to boast about the fact that she is able to raise money from what seems to be condemned by societal laws or by God's law. And she is still able to do work of righteousness. Why this example? The reason is to tell us that, brothers and sisters, we might try to do good works. We might try to make people's life better. But if it is not out of God's love, it is not out of God's commandment, if it is not out of Christ, the Bible says this righteousness is filthy in the face of God. So as we turn to this part where the six, I call it the six ethics of Jesus Christ, he will talk about anger. We are going to look at that today. He will talk about lust. He will talk about divorce, oath, retaliations, and last but not the least, love for your enemies. As we turn to this ethics of Jesus Christ, the foundational point is that we are not able to live all these righteousness, good works, without being bound with Christ. So, I have been referring to righteousness, and maybe some of you might be thinking, what is it? As you know, we are in the second phase of the Sermon on the Mount, and the main point over there is kingdom righteousness. You might be thinking, what is righteousness? Well, see, there are so many theological terms, we don't want to go into it, but think of it this way. There is a point where a judge can pronounce that you are right. And even if what you did was wrong, you can be freed from going to jail. Now, that kind of right pronouncement is what theologians refer to the imputed righteousness of Christ, the righteousness that is given to us. As we all know, in Romans chapter 3, what is God angry about? What is God's wrath about? It is that man has denied to accredit to him what he should be accredited for. In other words, we have turned our backs towards him. And we deserve to be punished. We have disobeyed that love, that is to obey him, that is to love him. And we deserve to be punished. But Christ came to obey the law so that he can pronounce before God for us that we are right. That is that part of righteousness where you don't do anything, but it is just pronounced unto you. And that is what I said. All the good things that we do, even with the example that I referred to, that Korean nice woman who thinks she's doing work of righteousness, if it is not from Christ, if it is not connected to Christ, it won't work. It is not righteousness. So Jesus turned to anger, and he's going to tell us how to live out right, so that even when we are angry, it should be for the right reason. So he started by quoting from Exodus chapter 20, verse 13. And when you look at the Septuagint, that is the exact duplicate of what was written there. And Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. Whoever murders will be liable to judgment." And here comes Jesus' authoritative speech. I say to you. Last week we saw this phrase. It's repeated 9 times. And anytime we see this phrase, Jesus is telling us the essence of what it means to live a righteous life. The one who has the authority to tell you what is right from the wrong. And this is what he tells us today. That everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Now this gets serious. What is Jesus talking about here? He expands the point for us, and he goes on to say, whoever insults his brother, whoever says, "You fool," is liable to judgment. Now, is there anyone here who has never said to another person, "Pabo"? I think all of us are guilty of this. And Jesus means it. He is equating anger with murder. What is Jesus referring to? If you look into the commentaries, the common idea that comes out is there is a root level anger. First, let's take Jesus as an example. There were places in the Bible where Jesus was angry. You remember when he went to the temple? He overthrew the tables, beat the people. There was a time he even called the Pharisees blind fools. There was a time when he healed on the Sabbath, and people rose against him that he has not obeyed the Lord. Mark makes it clear he was angry to their stubborn heart. So is Jesus saying that there is no place for anger? No, there is place for righteous anger. There is a place for anger where people rise to fight against unrighteousness and sin. But this same Jesus who rose in righteous anger against sin and injustice was insulted on the cross. He was mocked on the cross. And we all know what he did. He said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. When he was personally attacked, he asked for forgiveness for them. But let us be honest. We don't like criticisms. When we are personally attacked, the natural inclination for us is to fight back. Is to call names. Is to insult. Is to try to compare and look down on people. So Jesus is saying that because of our natural disposition to want to be angry against people, against our brothers, and of which is for our own good, even though we have not committed murder with our hands, in his view, we have actually committed murder. Which is killing someone with your hands, in Jesus' ethics, is the same as killing someone with your heart. Now we all know how young artists, young people have passed away in the Korean society because of some bad comments people threw at them. Sometimes words even kill faster than someone stabbing with a knife. And we all know we live in a Korean society which has become a very cursing society. As a matter of fact, the word translated insult here comes from the Aramaic raka, which means empty-headed. Now, if I give you the opportunity to tell me some of the ways Koreans say empty-headed, you can tell me a lot. If you look at the media, Korean has so many cursing words for people. One commentary gave over 50 cursing words in American language. That all means empty-headed, which is attacking someone's IQ based on your own standard. Jesus says you are killing the person. It's the same as murdering the person. You call someone fool. And I'm guilty of this. Sometimes when we go to places where we meet people who are not Christians, we turn to think that they are lost. We turn to use our faith in Christ to look down on them, to think that they are godless. And sometimes we separate ourselves from them in a way that is not recommended by God. As a matter of fact, when Jesus came, most of the time he spent were with sinners and people who were rejected. Jesus is saying when we do this, we are committing murder. And we have to take it serious and ask him to help us to relate well with others. So, this is a picture I'm gonna use to explain to the kids, but I thought it's useful to use it for adults, even though it may come out as very basic. Now, we all know that in life, there are 3 stages. If you are blessed with God, no one came to this world unless Jesus Christ, who was not born by a man and a woman. All of us, we came as a baby. We grow up and we become older and eventually we die. That is the basic essence of life. But through this life, there are things that are very important. And this is one thing that I personally think those are the 7 basic essentials of life. If I have time to do further studies, this is one thing I want to focus on. One area I want to focus on. I believe light and darkness and sleep are very good as a very basic essential of life, very basic necessity of life. Nutrition and water, very important. Exercise, very important. Relationships are very, very, very important. that is what we will take turns to look at today. We also have career, money, and breaks and entertainment are all important. But among all these, if you talk to people, people are pursuing these things in several ways. But Jesus is telling us that He needs to be the center of our lives as we pursue all these things. And today, He's going to tell us how we have to pursue relationships. So the point that comes out in verses 23 to 24 regards worshiping. And as Wujin helped us to read, and I believe most of you did your homework, you read the scriptures before coming. The point Jesus is making here is very clear. That worship and brotherhood are connected. They are inseparable. Jesus is saying that we don't have to pretend. When it comes to worshiping, we have to be honest. Remember the story of the first king of Israel, King Saul. When he thought sacrificing was important than obedience. When he thought that killing the animal and not waiting for the prophet to come to follow the procedure was important, God made it clear that obedience is important than sacrifices. God is making it clear that loving others, reconciling with others, is more important than all the worship that we may be going through, everything that we may be doing. And as a matter of fact, some of us, sometimes our prayers are hindered because of our bad relationships with our friends. As a matter of fact, the book of Peter makes it very clear. Shall we read it together? Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Some of us, we are going through, we are doing all the religiosities. We are coming to church, we are praying, but there is no peace between us and our couple, our spouse. Some of us, it's with our parents. Some of us, it's with our friends. Jesus is calling us that we need to reconcile. Because if we hold this thing inside, it actually breaks us down and it blocks our prayers. And the last one, he also talks regarding legal situation. Now, do you remember the seventh beatitude that we looked at? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons or children of God. We are called to be peacemakers, brothers and sisters. We are called not to drag issues. But right now, even little Korean kids are so obsessed with fighting for their rights. Everything is, it has to be my way. And why can't we have it that way? Why are you not doing the thing for me? Because it's my right. To the extent that we take everything for granted. We take the peace that we have for granted. We accredit all the success that Korea has achieved to the hard work of our grandparents. And sometimes, as children, we don't even appreciate our parents. We are so obsessed with things that have to go for us. My right, my right, my right. When we come to church, we are very nice to our church friends. But some of you, in our workplaces, we lack mercy. There was a time that I wanted to move house. And when I was looking for a house, I went to the Budonsan and I met, the Budonsan recommended me to a house, and then the house owner happens to be a Samonin, a pastor's wife. And then I made the down deposit, But something happened that I couldn't move to the house. I had to wait. And we had 2 weeks more to find someone. 2 weeks more before moving, because I signed the contract 3 weeks before. And I explained the situation, that things are not well at home. So I need to get this money and send the money back home. So I cannot move, I have to wait. She was like, no, I'm not going to give you the money back. She is a pastor's wife. And when it comes to money, and I know the law says that when you make down deposit, you don't have to. So I'm not saying that she did wrong thing by the law, but there was no mercy. We drag issues. I remember she telling me that I can go and look for a lawyer and we take this to court. Some of us, when we step out of church, we like to drag things. We like to take things. We like to be full of ourselves. We like to receive the accreditation. We like to get the recognition. All these ways do not promote peace. As a matter of fact, Jesus is calling us to die for one another. And by this, we live like children of God. So here are three reflection questions that I prepared for us that we can reflect. The first one is, do we have or do we keep unresolved anger or resentment? Remember, the book of Peter tells us that this might be hindering our prayers. Do we like holding grudges? Let us think about it and ask God to help us to reconcile. Have we run to the cross? Because brothers and sisters, like the F.O. girl who thought she was doing works of righteousness, without Christ, all of us cannot do anything good. Without Christ, the good things that we do most of the times are out of selfish motivations. And when we run to the cross, and when we see the love of God, and when we do things, we will do it through the love of God and not because of our own motivation. And last but not the least, do we model humility? Do we make peace? These are the questions I want us to think of as we bring today's message to a close and pray. Shall we pray?